Am I audible? Okay, I'm going to ask all of you a question. What do you want your child to be? I can see a lot of parents here. I'm sure many of you would say, I want him to be a doctor. Some of you would say, I want her to be an engineer. And some of the very progressive parents would say, I want them to be anything that he or she wants to become. But we always forget a quintessential skill that seals the future of our child's success. The ability to stand in another person's shoes. The ability to understand their emotions. Their ability to help others. Summed in one word, empathy. A very, very good afternoon to everybody. You know, in our academic system, empathy needs to be woven into the curriculum, but unfortunately, it's stagnant today. And do you know why? Because we are a generation of parents that are obsessed with grades, trophies, and scores. So until we are told that empathy is directly proportional to the success of our child's future, or that it will land them a plush job in the future, we would never realize how important it is to imbibe empathy in the early childhood days. Years ago, I started my career with Kotak Mahindra Bank, Hyderabad. So I happened to meet a very influential entrepreneur. He was in the limelight and much spoken about during those days for his dynamic character and for the fact that he had built a huge business empire at a very young age. So I was very, very excited. I went to him and asked him, how did you become so successful? What did you do? So I expected, like all entrepreneurs, he would tell me, you have to be focused, you have to work hard, you have to be determined. So I was expecting that answer. But what he said really, took me by surprise. He said, I have one mantra in life and I stick to it. Anyone and everyone can change my life. So let it be the sweeper in my office or the vice president of my company. I treat them with utmost and equal respect because you never know who might change your life. When our children go out into the world tomorrow, they're going to go out into a very global world. They're going to meet people of different cultures, creed, beliefs, value systems, personalities. So if you have a talent or a skill to actually take care of the diverse emotions, you're very competent out there. We all speak different languages, don't we? But there is one universal language, the language of emotions and feelings. Evidence has shown that children who are very empathetic, they are very productive in the future in cooperative learning and work environments. As a youth empowerment coach, I work across the globe. So I'm very blessed to spend a lot of time with the student community. I spend time with children from broken homes, children who are antisocial elements, children who are almost angelic, the emotionally rich ones. So after one of my emotional coaching sessions for a school in South India, for one of the popular schools in South India, I was standing in the reception watching the parents pick up their children. And I was in my own world, very nostalgic, thinking of those times when my dad used to pick me up. So as I was looking through the crowd, my eyes fixed on a grandmother. She was stooping because of what old age had done to her. So when I looked at her, after a while, her eyes lit up and there was a warm smile across her lips. So I knew that the tall, lanky boy who was walking towards her was definitely her grandson. So he had a huge guitar on his shoulder. So as he was coming, the grandmother outstretched her arms to hug him. And you know what he did? He took the guitar off his shoulder and put it on her shoulder. She almost fell with that weight, and the face which had lit up a few minutes ago seemed drained of its energy. The boy walked past her, and she also dragged herself to the vehicle that was waiting for them. So on further inquiry, I was told that he was one of the top scorers of the school and a very gifted musician. But is this what we want our children to be? Is this the education we are giving our children? Children who are empathetic are definitely more thoughtful and self-directed. If this boy was taught to learn his grandmother's expression, to understand her body language, to see what it means for her, I would have never been a witness to a scene like that. So children who are empathetic know what to do and what not to do. Now I'm going to give you a very surprising fact. With a raise of hands, tell me how many of you like reading books? Me too. You know, it's amazing, isn't it, to be transported into different destinations, twirling emotions, characters that we never knew existed. And I'm sure all the voracious readers would agree with me when I say we love it because we have a different picture. We are in a different world. We live the book. And there's a lot of evidence that says that empathetic children are better readers. You know why? I'm sure you know it now. Because they are able to understand what the characters in the book depict. They are able to live the book and they start developing an affinity towards reading. So the next time, if your child is not reading and you've been working on his or her language, maybe there's another factor also that you need to keep in mind. Now, having said all this, I'm sure you all realize that, empathy is not something we are born with. It's not like I'm empathetic Ashwathi. I'm not born like that. I'm sure you know that. And it's also not something, that comes automatically with the press of a button without an input from the environment. What does it take to put these children on the track? Culture matters. Personal experience matters. Parenting matters. You heard me right. Parenting matters. First thing that you need to do, teach your children to acknowledge their negative emotions. Children who acknowledge their negative emotions and learn to regulate it are much more empathetic than their counterparts. Before I started my company, I had a brief stint as a school counselor. So during one of those days, a young girl from 7th grade was brought to my cabin. So the teacher told me the complaint rather was that she would come to the class, put her head on the table and sleep the whole day. So this had been happening for over 3 months until they realized that she was just sitting in class. There's no use. So she was better off in my cabin than in the class. So that was the basic idea. And it didn't help that now she was flunking her grades. The teacher had eluded her, so had her classmates. So she came to my cabin, she sat there, and as usual, she put her head on the desk and she lied down. So I said, it must be hard having a stomachache, right? You lie down, it's okay. It happened for 3 days. The 4th day I asked her, hey, how does it feel to have a stomach pain? It must be very uncomfortable. What do you think? If you didn't have the stomach pain, how would you feel? So she gave me some answers. Then I said, what can you do to get over this? Is it the food? We went on talking. I mean, this is almost a tenure of a month. To cut the long story short, the stomach pain was a defense mechanism for a very nasty divorce that her parents were going through. So somewhere in the talk, her name came up. And it was the guilt that was in the form of a stomachache. So I did not tell her that things would be okay. Let me talk to your parents. I did not tell her anything. But I just told her, see, there is an emotion inside you. How can you work on it? Do you want to make it better? How do you think your life would be better? Today she's an 11th grader with straight A's in all her subjects in the 10th grade. Let's take an incident closer to home. Your young son or daughter comes back home, okay, and tells you, I don't like my friend. Why don't you like your friend? Because he got a prize and I didn't. You must all be relating to this, right? So we would, as parents, say, don't say that. He's your friend. It's okay. You will get a prize next time. These are some of the common things we would say. But imagine sitting him or her down and asking her, why do you think your friend got a prize and you didn't? Like, okay, you're angry. Okay. How do you think your friend might feel if he knows you're angry? Did he do something? No. How do you think, what other emotion can you do? What other feeling can you have so that it's not disturbing you and it's not disturbing him? This works like magic. Teach your children that they have negative emotions. We all have it. They're not perfect. Teach them they have negative emotions. Make them understand why it's happening. And also give them a replacement for the emotion. Tell them how they can replace it. The second thing is real life stories and fiction is a wonderful way on changing your children's perspective taking skills. I'm, like my son says, a cool mother of 2 children. My daughter is 11 years and my son is 6. My elder daughter, my elder child, who's a daughter, Avantika, she is a child with special needs. She was born with Down syndrome. So when my son was born, I was very concerned about how would he take it that he's a sibling of a special needs child. He would have much more challenges than his friends. Would he take care of her? Would he love her? Would he respect other people? Would he shun the society? So these kind of thoughts always ran in my mind, to an extent where I was wondering how I would, tackle it. So a year ago, I sat with him. Thanks to the lockdown, we have a lot of time to sit down with our children. So I sat with him and I told him, I'm going to tell you a story. His name is Dian. You know what? Some years ago, God decided that he was going to send 2 siblings to our house. Okay? So he said, first I'm going to send a girl and then I will send a boy. So he told the girl, out of both of you, I'm going to give some problems to one person. So is that okay with you? So the girl said, no, if you don't give anything to my brother, you give everything to me. Because I love my brother, I want him to be perfect. So God gave a small thing called Down syndrome to the sister and sent her down so that the brother would be perfect. So he, as usual, a young mind, he asked me, what is Down syndrome? So I told him it's something that is characterized by certain disorders and all of that. So he said, okay, Amma, this is a story. From where you read it? I said, can I tell you that this is our story? So he thought for a minute. I knew he was taking something in. So he asked me, Amma, this is Didi? I said, yes. And I knew that in his young mind he had registered when his eyes were glistening with a few drops of water. Well, I told him, I know what you feel. And I know that it's not going to be the same. I know it's going to be a little difficult for us. You see how Amma and Acha is also working a little extra. And you just have to love her. She's cool as she is. You know how much she works. And we went on with the conversation. But it made my day when somebody came from outside and commented on why she was so slow. And he said, you know what? We are all different. She has Down syndrome. Respect her because she's my Didi. And that was it. So it goes a long way. Tell your children stories, social stories which have similar circumstances like the one they are in. Tell them the emotions of the characters in the story. Tell them the emotions that they should have. Is it right? Is it wrong? How can you change it? Children are much more intelligent than we think they are. The third thing, I'm going to tell you a story. Once a grandmother and a grandson went to a zoo. So the grandson was very excited to see all the animals in the zoo. So he was jumping up and down holding his grandmother's hands. And when they were around the corner, they saw a lot of students were lined up, a lot of children were lined up for getting their face painted by a local artist. So this young boy had freckles on his face. Freckles are tan and brown spots on the face. It's not a skin disease, it's just a condition. So he went and he stood in the line. He was very happy, like he was going to get his face painted with tiger claws and very happy. Suddenly a young girl right in front of him turned back and said, you have freckles on your face. There is no place to paint it. The boy was crestfallen. He was so embarrassed that he dropped his head. His grandmother was watching everything from a distance. She came next to him, knelt down, with her wrinkled hands, touched his face and said, you know what? I love your freckles. When I was a little girl, I wanted these freckles. So he looked up and said, Grandma, really? She said, my love, tell me what's more beautiful than these freckles. He looked up at her face, gazed lovingly into her eyes, touched his palm on her face and said, wrinkles, Grandma, wrinkles. If you want your children to learn something, you are their role model. There is no other way to do it. You might not even notice that our children are like a sponge. They're taking everything that we are doing, saying, our body language, our hands, our words. So if you want your children to be empathetic, it starts from you. What are you doing? It's not enough understanding a person's emotion. Are you doing something to help? Live, let live, help live, said Lord Buddha. Are you really following him? What words are you using? What are your actions? There is no easier way than to be a role model for your children to follow. So if you are able to help them acknowledge the negative emotions, if you're able to expose them to the world of social stories and emotions in them and the emotions that they need to put out, and if you're able to be an excellent role model for your children, you, my dear friend, you're on the right track. So now let me ask you a question. What do you want your child to be? Do you want them to be a successful doctor or a warm-hearted caretaker of the society? Do you want them to be an influential businessman or a beloved leader? Do you want them to be a powerful politician or a nation builder? Do you want them to be wealthy by money or wealthy by emotions? What do you want your child to be? Thank you.